The autumn wind carried the scent of maple and fading warmth as Daniel tightened the scarf around his neck. His jacket, worn but clean, clung tightly to his aging frame as he stood outside the bridal boutique, waiting. Through the glass, his daughter, Leela, spun around in a white dress, her face radiant with laughter. She looked happy, the kind of happiness he had worked his whole life to protect. Daniel smiled, though he felt like a visitor to someone else's dream. From the sidewalk, he watched her twirl in front of her fiancé, Ethan, and a cluster of stylists. Leela was glowing, but Daniel couldn't ignore the way Ethan kept glancing at his watch, as if this was just another task to check off before lunch. Leela caught her father's eye through the glass and motioned excitedly for him to come in. He stepped inside, his boots squeaking slightly on the marble floor. The warmth of the shop wrapped around him like a forced embrace, but with them expensive. Out of his element, there he is. Leela beamed. "Dad, what do you think?" Daniel looked at her in the dress, the lace, the careful stitching, the way it hugged her like a whisper of time, and felt the lump in his throat swell. "You look like your mother," he said softly. Leela's eyes shimmered, and for a brief moment, the world shrank back to just the two of them. A single father, his only child, a bond forged through grief, laughter, struggle, and bedtime stories after long shifts. But the spell broke when Ethan cleared his throat. "She looks amazing, Mr. Carter," Ethan said, barely glancing at Daniel. "The dress costs more than my car insurance for the year. But hey, you only get married once, right?" Daniel forced a polite smile. He never liked Ethan's smirk, that smug, curated confidence of a man who'd never had to worry about money, about rent, about whether there was enough food in the fridge at the end of the week. "Good thing you're doing well at work, then," Daniel said gently. Ethan shrugged. "Well, you know how it is in finance. You play the game, you win the prize. Speaking of, my boss is flying in for the wedding. Big deal. He's got connections in New York, maybe even London. You should meet him, Mr. Carter. Might be inspiring." Daniel let the comment pass, as he had learned to do. Too many years had taught him to pick his battles, especially when they involved his daughter's future. Years earlier, after Daniel's wife, Rebecca, passed away, he closed his engineering firm. What once had been a growing business was now an unbearable reminder of what he'd lost. He had sold off everything to keep their house, raise Leela, and give her the education Rebecca had always dreamed of for her. He had picked up odd jobs tutoring math, drafting house blueprints for real estate agents, fixing things for neighbors, whatever kept the lights on and Leela fed. To the world he had vanished, but to Leela he had been the rock, or so he thought. College had changed her. She grew distant, polished, less open. When she met Ethan, she stopped visiting as often. Her world became champagne brunches, business parties, rooftop selfies. Still, Daniel never blamed her. That's what good fathers did. They gave their children wings, even if it meant they flew away. Now, back in the boutique, Leela was talking with the cashier, card in hand, as Ethan typed something on his phone. Daniel wandered to a corner of the shop, touching a small crystal vase on display. It probably cost more than he made in a month. Everything here was designed to impress, to signal wealth, power, perfection. He didn't belong, not in this wedding, not in this world. As they walked out, Ethan clapped a hand on Daniel's back. "You know, Leela tells me you used to be an engineer. That's pretty cool. Kind of sad how things ended up, though. If you ever want advice on investments or side hustles, I've got a few ideas." Daniel smiled tightly. "Thanks, but I still prefer building real things." Ethan chuckled like he didn't get it. Right, old school." Leela looped her arm through Ethan's, and they started down the street. Daniel followed a few steps behind, watching the two of them, his daughter, and the man who would soon be his son-in-law walk ahead, laughing, leaving him in the echo of footsteps and autumn. Leaves that night, Daniel sat alone in his small apartment, flipping through an old photo album. Leela's third grade recital. Her science fair trophy. The camping trip where she cried because she missed her mother. So many memories. All so far away now. He stared at a photo of Rebecca and whispered, "I don't think she needs me anymore." Outside, the city hummed with life, but inside Daniel's apartment there was only quiet. A soft, aching kind of quiet. The wedding venue looked like something pulled from a luxury lifestyle magazine, a private vineyard estate, white roses strung across an arched trellis, chandeliers hanging from trees like floating stars. Daniel had never seen anything so extravagant. He stood at the edge of the gathering, his suit neatly pressed, but several years out of fashion. His tie had belonged to his late wife, Rebecca's father. It was old, but it meant something. Unlike the designer one's being flaunted by Ethan's corporate friends. Daniel felt invisible. No one made eye contact. No one asked who he was. Servers passed him by like he was part of the decor. From a distance, he watched Leela glide through the reception, her wedding gown trailing like a comet's tail. She was beautiful, breathtaking. His heart ached with pride, but also sadness. She hadn't spoken to him much all day, only a quick hug after the ceremony, a rushed photo, and then off with Ethan and his entourage. He hadn't been asked to give a speech. That hurt more than he admitted. Later that evening, during the reception's cocktail hour, Daniel stood near the bar, sipping ginger ale, pretending he didn't mind being alone. Then he heard Ethan's voice, loud and polished, approaching. "Ah, there he is," Ethan said, clapping a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Boss, this is Leela's dad, the man of the hour." Daniel turned, surprised. A tall man in a navy blue suit extended a hand. Ethan's boss, Gregory Klein, CEO of a major investment firm. Gregory smiled. "Pleasure to meet you. You must be proud." Before Daniel could speak, Ethan cut in with a smug chuckle. "Yeah, he's kind of an unemployed loser these days, but he raised Leela well. Real old school guy, you know, bit of a hermit. Doesn't really do the business world thing." The words sliced through Daniel's chest. Gregory blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Ah, I see." Daniel stood frozen, forcing a smile, heartbeat thudding in his ears. A few guests nearby had heard, the kind who loved gossip more than cake. Ethan didn't even notice the impact. He turned back to Gregory, talking about a hedge fund opportunity, oblivious to the grenade he'd just dropped. Daniel stepped away. He found a quiet spot behind a hedge, leaned against the stone wall, and let the noise of the party blur into static. The ginger ale glass shook in his hand. Unemployed loser. That's what Ethan had called him, in front of his boss. At his daughter's wedding, a joke, sure, but one that revealed everything. Worse, Leela had heard it too. She had turned her head, locked eyes with Daniel across the lawn, and then looked away, said nothing. The pain wasn't the insult itself, it was her silence, her acceptance. Daniel stayed behind the hedge for a while, breathing through the sting. Flashback. A father's hands. He remembered the nights he stayed up grading college essays, so he could afford new shoes for her ballet classes. The calluses on his hands from fixing neighbors' roofs just to make rent. The hundreds of hours spent rebuilding Leela's confidence after she failed her driver's test or lost a friend. He remembered crying in the garage alone when she got accepted into college, not because he was sad, but because he knew he couldn't afford to help as much as he wanted. All those years of being her rock, all forgotten in one night, replaced by a label, unemployed loser. Later, he returned to the main event just in time for the first dance. Leela danced with Ethan, radiant and surrounded by flashbulbs. Daniel watched from the edge. His feet ached not from standing, but from holding himself together. He slipped out before dessert. That night back home, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, tie undone, jacket draped over the back of a chair. His apartment smelled faintly of old books and wood polish, lived-in modest, nothing like the world he had witnessed earlier. He stared at the table. In front of him sat a framed photo of Leela at age 5, holding a glitter-covered cardboard trophy that said "Best Daughter Ever." His eyes filled with tears, not just sadness, but something deeper, resolve. He rose slowly, walked to the closet, and pulled out a locked box from the top shelf. Inside were old business cards, notebooks, blueprints, and something he hadn't touched in years. The deed to his former company, Carter Design Solutions. He had let it sit dormant after Rebecca died. The business, like his ambition, had withered in grief. But now it was time. A loser. He whispered to himself, "Let's see what a loser can really do." Daniel's inner monologue ending beat. They didn't know the man who had built homes with his bare hands, who taught himself coding in his 40s, who used to lecture at engineering conferences, who once filed a patent that a billion-dollar firm tried to steal. No one remembered that version of him, but he was still here, and Ethan, he just made the worst mistake of his life. 2 weeks had passed since the wedding. The laughter, the lights, the insult, and the silence from Leela. Daniel sat in his modest apartment, the blinds drawn, a hot cup of coffee growing cold in his hands. He hadn't heard from her since the night he left her wedding reception early. No texts, no calls, not even a thank you card. But he no longer waited for one. Something inside him had changed. Not bitterness, no. Daniel didn't believe in letting bitterness rot his heart. What had changed was something sharper, more focused. He was no longer grieving the loss of his daughter's affection or Ethan's insult. He was preparing the comeback. The first thing Daniel did was revive his old consulting license. He dug through his storage unit for a dusty filing cabinet filled with old client records, vendor contacts, and tax returns from a time when Carter Design Solutions had been more than a memory. He updated his resume, but not under his name. He used a discreet alias, D.S. Carter Consulting. He set up a clean, professional website, bought a domain, started cold emailing contacts in architecture firms, sustainability groups, and urban planning conferences. No photos, no social media, just results. It didn't take long. He was still sharper even. Years of surviving on limited resources had made him more efficient, more precise. A few engineering startups bit, then a property developer. By the end of the month, he had more work than he could handle. All remote, all quiet, all under the radar, exactly the way he wanted it. Digging into Ethan in the evenings, Daniel researched. Not about buildings, but about Ethan. It started innocently enough, curiosity, a LinkedIn profile, a few public posts about hustle culture and generational wealth. But something didn't add up. Ethan's company, Holdings, claimed to specialize in ethical investment strategies, renewable energy portfolios, and startup incubation. But Daniel's engineering clients had warned him, plays dirty, so Daniel started pulling threads. Corporate filings, subcontractor lawsuits, a whistleblower blog from 3 years ago, quiet NDA signed by former employees. Even a news article buried under pages of SEO fluff. Local tech firm accuses Holdings of IP theft. The deeper Daniel looked, the darker it got. Shell companies, unlicensed assets, a paper trail of unethical acquisitions, and Ethan's name showed up repeatedly, not always directly, but close enough. His email, his initials, his signature on backdated documents. Daniel printed everything and organized it into a binder labeled simply Truth. Reaching out to old allies, Daniel knew he couldn't take down a company like Drenwell alone. So he picked up the phone and called someone he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. "Hello," came the voice on the other end. "Alex, it's Daniel Carter." A pause, then, "Well, I'll be damned." Alex Rivera had been Daniel's co-founder and closest friend before the company folded. He'd gone on to become a senior advisor at a green tech incubator in Seattle. He was brilliant, loyal, and he still owed Daniel a favor. They met for coffee the next morning. Daniel laid out the documents, one by one. Alex leaned back in his chair, jaw tightening as he flipped through the binder. "This is damning, and Ethan, he's the one marrying your daughter. He already did," Daniel said softly. Alex closed the binder, "Then let's ruin him." The first strike it started with a single anonymous tip. Daniel sent an encrypted email to a federal oversight agency detailing Drenwell's irregular filings and pending acquisitions. He attached files, screenshots, and dates. He used a burner account and rerouted it through 3 VPN. Within 72 hours, Drenwell was flagged for audit. Ethan had no idea. At the same time, Daniel reached out to one of his new clients, a renewable energy startup that had recently been approached by Drenwell for a potential acquisition. Daniel warned them off the record, "They'll promise exposure and funding," he said during a late-night Zoom call. "But they'll gut your IP, fire your engineers, and sell your work to the highest bidder. I've seen it happen." The deal was cancelled. Ethan's team lost a 6-figure commission. Internal panic began to spread. Still, Daniel said nothing. He just waited. Leela calls one night. Daniel's phone lit up. "Leela." He stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "Hey," her voice was quieter than usual. "Hi, Dad. Can I come over?" When she arrived, she looked different. Her smile was gone. Her makeup looked smeared, like she hadn't slept. They sat on the couch in silence for a while. She toyed with the ring on her finger. "Things with Ethan," she began. "He's not who I thought." Daniel didn't speak. "He didn't say I told you so. He just waited. He got angry last night, drank too much. He said I was lucky to be with someone like him, that without him I'd be just like you." Daniel's heart dropped, not in pain, but in fury. She looked up. "Dad, do you think I made a mistake?" Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. "No, sweetie, you made a choice, but that doesn't mean you're stuck with it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "He's not the man I thought I married." Daniel reached across and held her hand. "That's okay. You're not the girl you used to be either. You're stronger now. You can make new choices." The plan in motion. Daniel didn't tell her what he was doing. Not yet. But that night, he worked late. He finished the final part of his plan, a detailed report for a group of venture capitalists Ethan had been pitching to for months. He didn't use his name. He let the documents speak for themselves. Fraud, IP theft, tax discrepancies. Insider trading, it was all there. Then he waited for the perfect opportunity. The ballroom at the Astoria Grand was flooded with wealth and wine. Floor-to-ceiling glass revealed a glittering skyline. Waiters in black suits moved like shadows, pouring champagne into fluted glasses and placing amuse-bouches on silver trays. At the front of the room stood a stage with the Drenwell Holdings logo displayed on a massive LED screen. A sleek banner read, "Sustainable Futures Summit, Investment in Tomorrow's World." This was Ethan's night. He was the closing speaker, scheduled to unveil a groundbreaking green energy acquisition that would, in his words, cement Drenwell's legacy. Investors from San Francisco, London, and Singapore filled the room. Media outlets hovered at the edges. A live stream was being prepared. Everything was perfectly arranged for Ethan to shine. What he didn't know was that Daniel had been invited too. Not as a guest, not as Leela's father, but as a speaker. The revealed Daniel stood behind the curtain off stage, smoothing the sleeves of his tailored navy blazer. A sharp modern cut fitted quiet power. His hair was neatly combed, beard trimmed, eyes calm and calculating. The event coordinator stepped up. "Mr. Carter, you're on after Mr. Rhodes." "Thank you," he said, "not Daniel Carter, but D.S. Carter, founder of Ridgepoint Design Strategies, a legitimate company, a rising consultancy, one that Ethan had tried and failed to sabotage weeks ago. Ethan, on stage. Ethan walked onto the stage to scattered applause, glowing under the spotlight in a fitted tuxedo. His voice rang with practiced charm as he spoke about innovation, impact, and ethical capitalism. Investors nodded. Journalists scribbled, a few smiles, a few flashes from expensive cameras, and now. Ethan said, "We're proud to announce our exclusive partnership with Soluz Dynamics, a cutting-edge solar firm that..." A man in the audience stood and whispered something to his colleague. Then another. Whispers spread like wildfire. A sharp voice from the back of the room said, "Soluz just issued a press release. They're not partnering with Drenwell. They called off the deal this morning." Ethan blinked. Laughed awkwardly. "That's news to me. Then maybe this next speaker can clarify," said the host. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome D.S. Carter, founder of Ridgepoint Strategies, the firm Soluz Dynamics is now working with instead." Ethan's face froze. From behind the curtain, Daniel stepped into the light. The moment he didn't rush, he didn't grin. He walked like a man who had spent a lifetime being underestimated and no longer cared. Applause began, hesitant at first, then growing as industry professionals recognized the name. Daniel nodded once at Ethan, not with malice, but finality. Ethan took a step back, his mouth slightly open. Daniel turned to the crowd. "Good evening," he began. His voice calm, steady, strong. "I'd like to speak to you tonight not just about innovation, but about integrity." He tapped a small remote. Behind him, the LED screen flickered and changed to a slide. "The Hidden Costs of Greed, a case study of Drenwell Holdings." Gasps rippled through the audience. Over the next 10 minutes, Daniel laid it all bare without naming Ethan directly. A pattern of unethical acquisitions. Tax irregularities, fabricated numbers in sustainability reports, real documents, real timelines, real consequences. Every statement backed by evidence, every slide a nail in the coffin. And then Daniel closed with this: "Sustainable futures don't come from companies that prey on innovation and silence their critics. They come from people who build with care, who act with principle, even when no one's watching." He stepped back. "Thank you." The room erupted into applause. Ethan gone. The fallout the next morning. Headlines hit the financial world like a lightning bolt. Drenwell under investigation for financial misconduct. Anonymous whistleblower unmasks corporate deception. Rising consultant D.S. Carter steals the spotlight and the deal. Ethan's face, pale, furious, broken, was caught on camera as he left the gala early. By afternoon, he had been suspended pending internal review. Within a week, his name was scrubbed from the company website. The letter, a few days later, Daniel received a handwritten letter in the mail. "No return address. Dad, I saw the live stream. I had no idea what you did, not just to stop him, but how you did it with dignity. I've never been prouder. I wish I'd listened more. I wish I'd stood up for you that day. I'm so sorry for what I let him say. If you're open to it, I'd love to see you. Maybe we could start over. Not because I feel guilty, but because I finally understand what strength really looks like. Love always." Leela. Daniel read the letter 3 times, hand trembling. Then he picked up the phone. The new beginning. They met at a small cafe near the river. No cameras, no media, just a father and a daughter, 2 coffees between them. Leela looked nervous. Daniel just smiled and opened his arms. She rushed into them, hugging him like she hadn't in years. "I missed you," she whispered. "I was never far," he said, just quiet. They sat for hours talking, really talking. About Rebecca, about growing up, about choices and forgiveness, and when she asked him, "Do you think I made a mistake?" Daniel didn't give her a lecture. He just said, "We all make mistakes, but not all of us are brave enough to learn from them." Final scene later that week, Daniel returned to his apartment. It was still modest, still small, but now filled with life. Papers on the table, client contracts. A framed note from Soluz Dynamics, a coffee mug with Boss Dad, written in shaky kid handwriting, a gift from Leela when she was 9. He poured himself a fresh cup of coffee and looked out the window. He was no longer the man hiding behind hedges at weddings. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't broken. He was Daniel Carter, a builder, a father, a storm dressed as a gentleman.